Building AI bots for customer service.
Yeah.
That's an opportunity. It's an opportunity that a lot of people see. A lot of people will make money doing it. Will there be AI bots for customer service in 30 years? Yes, but is it really, really clear that that's a 30-year problem arc that one company is going to have a huge advantage on and continue to compound? That's not obvious to me. The biggest change is that I'm seeing founders tackling much bigger problems than before because they personally know that they have an army of robots behind them and they know they can do more with less. I'm a very big believer that for a lot of jobs, AI is the best tool, but we need to start learning how to instill that becomes a really, really important thing.
You're the leverage man, what you're known for. It's the most synonymous term. I want to ask, how has the definition of leverage changed?
My definition of leverage is
Eric, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Pleasure. I'm going to jump straight into line of questioning. You have access to, have spoken to, conversate with, have distilled lessons from, and written books about some of the world's best thinkers, philosophers, doers, and operators. How are you, Eric Jorgenson, operating in 2025? Through what lens are you seeing the world with?
The lens that I try to see all of my work and all of the world really through is looking back at 2025 through the possibilities of 2050, let's say. I like a 20 to 30 year time frame for both investing and for seeing sort of the adoption of technologies and for just seeing how the impact of decisions that we're making today, the things that we're talking about today, what will still be relevant over a 20, 30 year time span. So that's something that a lens it's not natural to wear every day, but I try to put it on every day and use that as a filter for what I consider important to do today or this week, or who to talk to, what to work on, who to work with, where to put money, where to put time, where to put resources, stuff like that.
Can you talk to me about that on a practical level for you? Are you sitting there meditating on it? Are you spending some time visualizing this? How exactly do you picture that, and how do you make that picture more clear?
Yeah, so the clearest place that this appears, and then maybe it'll make more sense to apply to everything else, is actually on the investing side. So I run a small venture fund. We invest in pre-seed and seed startups, and the nature of that business is you look at 1,000 startups over the course of a year, and you invest in 10. And the first filter that clears out a lot of things, even if they're really good ideas and even if they're really talented people, is they're working on ideas that are over a 5-year timeline, they'll be relevant. So to me, building AI bots for customer service is yeah, like that's an opportunity. It's an opportunity that a lot of people see. It's something that's going to get built. A lot of people will make money doing it. Um, will there be AI bots for customer service in 30 years? Yes. But is it really, really clear that that's a 30-year problem arc that one company is going to have a huge advantage on and continue to compound? That's not obvious to me. As a different example, one that we actually did just invest in is an asteroid mining startup. And so if you look at, and part of what compelled me about that was looking at hearing the founder's vision for, by 2050, 2060, it will be so common and so much cheaper to get some of these, in particular, platinum metals that are abundant among asteroids, to pull them in from space than it is to mine them from deep, deep within the earth, which is dangerous and dirty and bad for the environment. He's like, it'll be illegal to mine these minerals on earth because it's just obviously bad compared to getting them from space. And that's just that is a really, really cool thing that when you tell people you invest in an asteroid mining startup, most people are like, you're stupid. That's 50 years away. But it's not for the engineers who are actually working on it, because, and the other people who are sort of thinking in this 20 to 30 year time frame. I think there's some people working in crypto and AI that are working on a 20, 30 year time frame. That's not a judgment on the particular technology. That's just a judgment on sort of how big and how far of a vision you can see is. And when you can do something for that long with intensity and compounding and focus and get deep, deep, deep into a problem and work on it for a really long time, that's where you see these really big impacts come. Rather than, there's people in AI and crypto both who shift every 3 years rather than pick a thing that they know is going to be true about 2050 and hammer on it for decades.
Got you. With asteroid mining being one example, what are maybe some other examples of the biggest threads that you're following on a 30-year timescale, and where does AI fit into that picture for you?
Another one is energy, like energy just as a like very fundamental currency. And we've had a weird last 50 years. G- If you look at the last 200 years, the last 50 is a very weird aberration in sort of the growth of energy and the growth of the production of energy and how we produce it, for like reasons that are probably outside the scope of this podcast. But it's a very interesting problem, and it's a very it's a problem very closely tied to like wealth and human suffering and population growth and all of these things. So it's an incredibly important thing that is just like a little abstracted from most people's day to day. Um, Energy is actually being pulled into the spotlight in part because of AI, because of how its presence either as a active bottleneck or a very close second bottleneck for the development of AI. And I see AI as a really interesting, like an accelerator and a multiplier effect on basically all of the other technologies. So for as much impact as AI is going to have on information work and, all the things that we talk about all the time, right? Like law and all email jobs and laptop jobs and design. Um, some of its biggest impact might actually be to pull forward some of the discoveries in physics or biology or chemical engineering or material science or manufacturing that are just like inflection points in those crazy potential future technologies that might happen in 10 or 20 years instead of 50 or 100. And those are very difficult to predict. I think at this particular moment, there's a lot of like debate around like where AI is and isn't having impact on scientific progress, which is like maybe the most interesting thing about this kind of where we're at. I think it will certainly eventually, but just like when it starts and what breakthroughs happen when are going to be very, very interesting.
With this mindset that you've assumedly honed over time to think on this timescale beyond what anyone else does. I mean, most people I know are 1 to 5 years. This is how they think about cycles of life, but you're 20, 30, 50 years in the future. Assumedly, you didn't always think about things like this. How did you manage to actually, like, I guess, cultivate this mindset?
Yeah, there's a few things. I mean, one I acknowledge like it is an extreme privilege to be able to think in that time frame. Like when I was a broke 22-year-old, I did not think about like a 10-year time frame nearly as often. I thought about like paycheck, food, work, like
Yeah.
the project in front of me, earn the next dollar. So some of it I think is like getting a little older and growing into that. Some of it is being able to open up that time scale. Some of it is just seeing those patterns play out a number of times over again. Some of it, frankly, is being forced to when so crypto is an interesting example. Like crypto got adopted by some people incredibly quickly. And there were a bunch of people saying, oh, the internet is going to accelerate adoption curves. And it's going to like, this whole thing is, there's going to be 100 million active users of wallets in 3 months. And it just didn't work out that way. Like we are still relatively far from mainstream crypto use cases. Um, and there's some good, like Carlotta Perez is one of the sort of canonical books about this, technological revolutions and financial capital, I think is the title. Short book, like somewhat easy read, but academic. And it defines this kind of like 50-year technology adoption curve that roughly all technologies go through. Now that may shrink from 50 to like 45 or 42 or something, as some of the cadence of this adoption quickens, but it's not going to go to 4 years. And so some of it, the widening scope is just being forced by reality to see how long some of these technology cycles take, especially in the big industries that are really like the core pillars of the economy, right? Like healthcare and defense and education. Like the bigger and more institutionalized these things are, the slower they are to adopt, for totally like predictable reasons. Um, that said, there's also like areas of the economy where they can get adopted really, really quickly, and that's very exciting. Um, the other, I mean, there's a handful of books and people that I follow who have a very long time view, and I think that's it's healthy to look at things in that way. Like when you're not making decisions for, the financial quarter or the political cycle to get reelected, but you're making decisions for like the civilization over a 50 or 100-year time frame, you're going to make better decisions as a leader in business. You're going to make better decisions as a politician. You're going to make better decisions in your role, like as a steward of an organization or anything like that. So, um, I'm a believer that it is a very healthy mindset to have. Like, if you just try to make the decisions, like what would be the best for your kids, whether or not you have them, what is the best thing for the civilization over a 100-year time frame, what makes more people more better off, not immediately necessarily. There's a lot of like dead ends and mistakes that we make when we try to directly tackle like the twigs and leaves and of suffering rather than like the root and trunk causes of suffering, because it's just too much of a focus on the short term and not enough focus on the fundamental things that improve the most lives over the long run.
If that's the lens through which we're seeing this, how can we fundamentally improve the most amount of lives by the biggest factor? Where do you see AI fitting in amongst all of this? Does it have potential to do both? Like, where are you seeing it currently used in the network that you're exposed to?
I mean, I see AI as like, well, my view. I should start with my view on like all technology is that I have yet to hear anyone make a compelling case uh, that any technology in human history has done more harm than good.
What's the one that comes to mind? Lead and fuel. Does that count as technology, or is that just an invention? What's the difference?
I would. It's a very very broad view, right? Like I think of religion as a technology. Um,
Okay.
for example, so like I think every invention, every technology, I think that's only a good thing. Um, and there are every technology has a inherent downside to it, but almost all of them have done more good than harm because humans are on balance more good than evil. AI, I think, will be an incredible like force for good objectively and increased productivity. Um, I think there will be some short term discomfort and like a widening gap between people who use it and people who don't. Um, but that is the case with almost every technology, and I think it'll get more people out of brutally boring, terrible jobs, that they don't like, and over time, even though there's some, like, temporary displacement of people who would rather have a bad job than no job at all, I'm 0% concerned over, like, short-term unemployment as a result of AI. I know some people are, um, but the entire history of innovation, like, we've seen nothing but increased like unemployment over the long run. And we're have really low unemployment right now. So I'm not until we see like a decade or two of structurally really high unemployment as a result of AI, I'm just not worried about it. Um, I think there's a lot of good that can come of it. The best case for bad is like a super misaligned evil like uh super intelligence. I'd put pretty low odds on that actually. I think more likely in the near term, near being 2 or 3 decades, bad outcome is like people who didn't used to be able to build like nuclear bombs or biological weapons who are inherently evil people or who see like a large percentage of the world, in particular Western culture, as evil, are now able to have capabilities to do a lot of like sort of asymmetric harm that they couldn't have done before. Um, that could be really bad, but it's not a reason to not build it.
Mm, got you. I mean, I think if you kind of bring up books like Factfulness, it's kind of that direct linearity between technological innovations and a reduction in all observable metrics to do with human happiness and satisfaction, right? It's like an exact inverse of each other. As technology and innovation increases, all of our happiness metrics go up. And I'm curious, like with AI in the spotlight right now, you've got access to a crazy network. You do a lot of research on very intelligent individuals. Like, how are the smartest people you know thinking about AI? Is anyone refusing to adopt it, or is everyone kind of on the curve ready to go?
I think almost everyone is using it to different extents. based on like their comfort level or learning curve or whatever. Like I see very, very few people who are like not trying to at least fold it into their daily life. Some people are better at it than others. The software people are probably the fastest to it. I think like software engineers in particular are just so used to adopting new tools, and they have seen their productivity multiply by so much with like GitHub Copilot and Replit and stuff like that. Um, there are a few like business leaders that I know. Actually, I'm sure he'll come up a few times in this conversation. Sean Devine is like criminally underrated for how good he is as a leader, in particular with respect to AI. And I had him on my he's a friend, and I had him on the podcast probably a year ago now when like GPT-4 just came out, and he's been like integrating it into his organization and his entire team since uh, 2.5, maybe 3. And so he was like years ahead in seeing this. And some of his takes about like where software is going to go and how to build organizations around it is very interesting. But I think the biggest change is that I'm seeing founders tackling much bigger problems than before because they feel they personally know that they have like an army of robots behind them, and that they know they can do more with less. So I'm seeing like really interesting founders and pitches who are like, hey, I know like 20 years ago when this roughly the same idea was tried, or here are the historical attempts and how much capital they've required or the teams that they've required. And I think with X, Y, and Z new tools or new systems, this unsolvable problem just became solvable, or just became sort of financially feasible to solve with a more standard like pre-seed and seed fundraise. Um, this one's further along, but I think a decent example is like the tool and die industry has been like famously, I don't know, famously, but like very mechanical and like handcrafted and iterative in the physical world. And Aaron Slotoff has built this incredible sort of, I think he'll end up being like the biggest tool and die manufacturer in the world. And he's like, AI enables a level of productivity, AI and automation in particular, like are going to enable us to drop the cost of tool and die by maybe a factor of 10, maybe more. And in doing so, we'll speed up the entire manufacturing like process for thousands and tens of thousands of manufactured goods like all around the world. And these things are like invisible unless you're closer to the supply chain. But things are going to happen like faster and cheaper and better. And most people will never really understand why, but like somewhere in that supply chain, somebody's using AI in a new way to build a new kind of company that displaces an old manual way. And those breakthroughs are just happening all over the place.
Something that you've touched on there is that the skills required, the skill environment is vastly different from what it used to be, right? As you were talking about developers and how they're using tools like Replit and VO and stuff to work 10 times faster, right? And how you can have an army of robots behind you that means you can tackle problems that are 10 times as large, 10 times quicker, 10 times the scale. And I want to propose a bit of a thought experiment with you, all right? So I want you to imagine that you take a new intern out of college right now. They've done a degree, that's a made up degree in basic life skills. So they know how the world works, right? They've got a grasp on the world at a basic level of competence.
Okay.
You then take this person, you get 5 years to train them on whatever you want. You can teach them anything, you can teach them skills, ways to look at the world, expertise, whatever. But AI doesn't exist. AI is just like not feasible in their universe. It doesn't exist. So you can teach them software engineering, you can teach them mathematics, you can teach them physics, and you can teach them ways of thinking about the world. But AI just doesn't exist for this 5 years, right? And then after this 5 years, they come back into here, January 13th, 2025, and you want to give them the biggest chance of success at succeeding in entrepreneurship, building the largest company, just succeeding in the modern world. What subjects would you teach them? What traits would you try and instill in them? What books would you tell them to read? And like what
Mm.
lens would you give them to look at the world through?
With the goal of generating like the biggest company or
Well,
the
let's
most
go
like
with your
outsized
goal,
impact.
right? As like making the biggest utilitarian impact on the world.
Okay. Um, That is a very fun question, and probably a very long conversation that merits like a whiteboard and some paper. But I'll do my best off the top of my head live. And if I miss anything, you let me know. So I think there's probably a smart order to this that I'll get wrong, but like very fundamentally, you need them to know enough to not get fooled by anybody else or any AI. So you need like fundamental levels of math, physics. Um, I think you can, I think math, physics, and like history actually really important. Um, Probably wouldn't start with history, but like somewhere along the line, you want them to really, really deeply understand like I'm a big believer in like the Will Durant sort of like study history as a way of studying philosophy. So I'd have them read like the story of civilization, um, and all of his work. You need to understand not just programming computers and tools. So I think some basic level of like computer science and programming, that comes with sort of information theory. Um, Definitely like basic economics, persuasion and sales skills. Like I think one misnomer in this um the AI world is like, oh, you don't need to like all you need is technical knowledge anymore. And I actually think that a lot will come down to persuasion and understanding the problems. I think a lot of people who think they have good ideas and just need somebody to build them are now going to realize that their ideas weren't that good, or that you need to iterate through ideas. The fundamental traits or, I think are extremely good. I think you need great judgment, which is a difficult thing to train. You need, like, a good feedback loop. Um, I'd actually like to get that, I would prescribe, like, cold call sales or door-to-door sales for a little while. I had a chapter of that, and I think it was, like, great for me. Just, like, embracing rejection, understanding how to iterate, practice sort of reading subtle signals of, like, dissent or agreement. Um Online or in person, like, both are important. I think, this one comes from Sean too. He's like, "You absolutely, um endurance is, like, massively underpriced in the age of AI." Like, you have an absolutely tireless companion who, as long as you can, like, stay awake and keep working, can keep pace with you and can multiply your efforts. But in most cases, unless you have done a bunch of pre-work, as soon as you stop working, they stop working. Um just because they're so fast. Like, so you need good judgment, you need a logical and understanding of, like, very logical framework, you need persistence and endurance, to get the most out of these tools, essentially. Um, and I still think you need to be good at working with other people. Like, however much leverage any individual has, they probably still have high and low sort of stat bars in their unique efforts. It's a very rare person that doesn't. And so while total team size will get a lot smaller, I think, and you can have a huge impact on a relatively small size of team with AI, you still want to have very positive, wonderful working relationships with a handful of people. Um, just you want the average of that to keep going up, and you want to really deeply understand and multiply everybody's strengths, and try to supplant their weaknesses. Um, Math, physics, history, sales, persuasion, basic economics. Um, I would like if I got to be prescriptive, I would go deep on the history of a few industries, like energy in particular, and maybe even deep on the current state, and recent past of a few in particularly like in particular critical technologies. Um, I think nanotech, AI, and energy are all going to be like extremely important over the next 40, 50 years. Bio. So maybe just picking like one or two of those and spending a year on all the recent kind of papers and researchers, what's been tried, what hasn't. Some of the best founders that I've seen now have basically done that study themselves. And when you drill down on the history of the industry or all of the other sort of competitive attempts out there in the market right now, they have like very credible arguments for why different things will and won't work or what roadblocks they'll run into. Um, that's a lot of work for 5 years, but I think it's doable.
Does
The Great Books program, that would be another one, along with right next to history, the Great Books. So, like, that's your humanities. That is, like, an extremely based and important, like, humanities degree, is read all the great books and read the story of civilization. Um, and then on the technical side, yeah, math, physics, if you had time, some chemistry or biology, but, those are a little more field applicable rather than, like, fundamental base.
great answer. First time I've ever asked that question, and you went into
Oh,
a lot there. If something I'm noticing with AI is that there is this kind of widening gap, right? Is that people in their university, their college years, high school years just now have grown up with access to this technology, to AI, and they don't actually know how to do the fundamental skills. And so when AI is layered on top, they're not actually able to kind of define the difference between a quality output and a "Mm, average output because I've never learned to develop the fundamental skill in the first place."
yeah.
Where do you kind of foresee the education of these fundamental skills as well? And like, how does that intertwine with AI? Because I've spoke to a few people within, for example, like US education departments and high school teachers and stuff like this. And there's a lot of concern right now about implementing AI and just this loss of the fundamental skills. Like, have you get any inkling into what this looks like, or what would you prescribe if you were in charge of the Department of Education?
I can I just destroy it?
Yes, you can. Feel free.
I'm not sure that's a good idea, but a blank sheet of paper might be a good start, to work on from. I It's outside my area of expertise, but, it's just a hunch. I think it's an amazing quote that, "You can only conceive of the level of excellence you've seen before." I think that's, like, the overarching prescription for the question that you're asking and the problem. I think, a lot of being a good, like, user of AI, quote unquote, comes from, like, the judgment to know when something is done or when it's good. And if you haven't seen better than that, it's very easy for a high school junior to, like, be like, "Hey, ChatGPT, write a paper about, Huck Finn." And they've never seen a good paper. They don't know what the difference is between an A and a C, and so they just submit what's there. Maybe they, like, change some words and sentence structure so it doesn't look AI generated or whatever. Um, but it's really that doesn't help them. It helps them, like, game the system, which is, like, what most of us did in school, but it doesn't help them to become a good user of AI. And so I think, like, a great prescription might be, here is the best 5-paragraph essay about Huck Finn, ever written. Um, your mission is to replicate it, argue all of the opposite things at the same level of quality. I do not care what tools you use. Right? And so then you're putting the student in a position of, like, they're having to learn to become a prompt engineer. They're having to learn what's good about this essay. What are the points that it's making? How do I make the counterpoint? How do I evidence the counterpoint? Is it easier for me to write it, or is it easier for me to, like, have AI do the opposite of it? How do I tell AI what's good about this and not, so that it knows what to replicate? Um, or match or whatever. And so you start almost incidentally, like, researching the structure of a 5-paragraph essay. You start understanding the arguments of the book. You try to decide, like, who wrote this thing? Why? Does that essay support the argument that the author was making? Or is my essay supporting the argument? Can I pull anything from the author's life? So it just reframes the same assignment, and shows you where the target is to help you. Like, I'm a very big believer that you just use the best tools for the job. And for a lot of jobs, like, AI is the best tool, or at least the best companion. But we need to start learning how to instill, like, taste and judgment and discretion. Like, that becomes a really, really important thing, because options, it is basically free or marginally free to generate new options. You can have AI come up with 100 possible book titles right now, or 1,000, for the same amount of effort, but knowing which one is going to appeal to a ton of people. Now that comes from, like, have you studied advertising? Have you looked at the history of advertising? Do you know what makes great copy? Do you know, like, what is and isn't the right level of mystery? Do you know what people find funny? Like, AI can answer some of those questions, but if you don't use the tools to answer some of the questions and then compare them and then combine them, like you're not doing enough work. And so I think AI is going to raise the bar for what good work is, because the people with good judgment and good taste who do understand those things are going to use AI, and they're going to become more prolific and they're going to do more work, and there's just not going to be room for mediocrity anymore. And so the people who do the work to figure out what is good and what is excellent and create that and create more of it, like that's what we should be focusing on. Because you don't want people to be left behind. But if you don't know what good looks like and you don't know how to discern, then the most powerful tool in the world is not going to help you. Um, so that's the it's a very different thing to teach than we have been teaching, and it's a very different method. And I think some teachers are probably doing an incredible job of this right now, but I think it's probably the minority of like forward thinking, very innovative, brave teachers, frankly, who are like doing the work to figure all this out and actually act on it at this particular moment in time. The other like thing, if you're just a person who's like, why do my teachers suck, is like put yourself in the environment where people are producing excellent work. Like your environment will educate you, your friends will educate you. You can choose where to plant yourself, and doing that is going to change you. So like, even if find your online community, find change who you follow, change who you work with, find your way into the best company that you possibly can, and put yourself in an environment that's going to force you to confront what is and isn't excellent and how you can level up.
I mean, what it sounds like is that you're saying if you really want to get excellent at using AI, then spend a decent amount of time not using AI, learning the threads of history, learning the actual fundamental skill first before you apply AI on top of it. Learn the fundamental skill of thinking, first principles thinking. How does that all fit in amongst this?
I think that's important. And I don't want to say that you shouldn't use AI to learn those things. Like AI may be the best tool to learn them, but you have to very deliberately learn them. If you go in with no understanding of where the finish line is and what good looks like, straight to the task, that's you just don't even know what the target is you're trying to hit.
Yeah. All right. I love it. I want to shift on to another topic that you talk a lot about online and you've covered a lot. I want to talk about leverage.
Yeah.
You're the leverage man. It's what you're known for. It's the most synonymous term with Eric Jorgenson in my head. So I want to ask, how has the definition of leverage changed between August 15th, 2025 or 2020 and today, the 13th of January, 2025?
I don't think the definition has changed. I think it's just gotten more important and more the tools have gotten more powerful. Like my definition of leverage is like a multiplier effect, different ways to get a multiplier effect on whatever you're doing.
Mhm.
Um, and as I mean, this is the AI podcast, so we're going to focus on AI. Like as AI tools in particular have gotten better, the opportunities to build your leverage have gone up. There are people who are focused on building their leverage and using it to do whatever they're doing better. That's going to be, I think, using leverage um, is going to be the defining sort of that's what's going to define the outcome of your life and your career. Um, Now, historically, that may have meant most people associate that either with like I have to become a manager, I have to build a team, or I have to build a company, and I have to get smart people on it, and it's been very human focused. Or for the last like 50 years of Wall Street and equity and trading and crypto, it's like how do I get the most money? How do I build a fund? How do I multiply my judgment times as much money as possible so that I can have financial leverage on the decisions I'm making and create a good outcome that way? Um, Software has given a lot of people a lot more leverage, and now like media, podcast, newsletters, like you are living this, right? Like you started with no leverage, you built up an incredible newsletter, you built up an audience, you built up trust, you building this podcast. You are building leverage with each new piece of media that you create. Now AI is going to give a lot more people a much broader set of capabilities. I tried to teach myself to code at some point, like early in my career in Silicon Valley, and I'm just like it does not suit my personality. Like, I'm not particularly good at it. I don't have the patience for it. Debugging drives me fucking nuts. Um, I'm just a, like, I'm an 80/20 as fast as possible and then on to the next one kinda guy, not a, like, engineer to perfection no matter how long it takes kinda guy. Um, Weirdly, I am like that in books, but, like, only books. I don't know why. Um, but I think that's why I have, so much fun writing them. But the set of possibilities that are available to you now, like the number of people that can generate software, or generate good writing, or at least better writing than they're capable of on their own, is gone up dramatically with these new AI tools. And so I think what's going to happen is the the expectations of the productivity of every employee have gone up. They basically have already gone up in the tech and software world. They are going to continue to go up in every other aspect. I think, like law and accounting is going to very quickly get to this. I think it's going to take longer for some more physical engineers or things like that. But essentially, like, if you don't learn to use leverage broadly, but in particular, I think the biggest step available to everybody right now, no matter who you are and what you're doing, is an AI tool. ChatGPT is $20 a month. Pretty much no matter what you're doing, you can afford $20 a month. Just pop that thing open and start using it to do whatever your current job is. And you're on the track to being the most productive person in your role, which means you're on the track to getting more responsibility, to getting promoted, to getting not laid off when other people get laid off, because the expectations of everybody have just gone up. Um, in particular, white collar digital workers, and I think that's good. It's good for the economy. It's good for all of the people who will adopt it, and people who aren't going to start using it are going to go find another job, and that's okay. Or maybe they'll start using it a little later, or maybe they'll find that they're better at using like managing people than they are at using AI. And that's fine too. Um, so it is just going to create this big, not a rift, but a like that divide of people who use it and people who don't are going to keep getting bigger. But I think everybody can and should be using it, and it'll just take some work. It's different work than most people are used to doing to like learn how to use a new tool, and a lot of people don't have the patience for it. Um, but the returns on it are going to be massive.
I want to talk about how people can move from conceptualizing leverage to actually practicing it in principle and
Mm,
making leverage an action, right? Because I come from a working class background or middle class background, and my mum was a head teacher at primary school, my dad a sales engineer, and
mm.
the results of the work were always a direct response to how many hours they put in. You work 20 hours, you get paid X amount. You work 40 hours, you get paid Y amount, right? So for me, this idea of leverage is something that I've only learned as I've kind of entered my 20s, and it's such a foreign concept. And it's all well and great for you to read a book about Naval or hear someone speak about it and be like, oh, yeah, that's great. Like, I kind of understand the concept. But how can I move that into something that is just a daily action, a lens through which I see the world, and I start performing all the time?
Yeah, I think there's a few sort of habits that you can pick up, right? Questions to ask yourself, figuring out how you can retrain yourself to see the leverage solution or the leverage option that you have across a different number of challenges that are presented with you, or tasks that you have to do every day. So one that I like ask myself a lot is, am I doing the things that only I can do? Right. So like a good test of delegation is like there's stuff that only I can do. Like this podcast, it would be hard for somebody else on my team or for AI or for my EA to like replace me in whatever would come out of my mouth coming on this podcast. What I would write in an email to schedule something is probably roughly what my EA would write to schedule something. It also might be roughly what um, an AI would write to schedule something. Like, so what percentage of my time am I doing the work that is like truly unique, truly like exclusive to my particular skill set and perspective? Um, I think that's a good one. It helps you sort of sort out those tasks on what could be delegated, what could be automated, what could be just not done. How do you keep as much of your time as possible there? Another is don't repeat yourself, record yourself. So this is a really good this is a broader application than just like record a podcast. This is when you find a well-run business almost without fail, they have incredibly well cataloged, well maintained, and well followed practices and procedures and processes, like standard operating procedures, you know, uh these like flow charts of like if then statements so that everybody's making the same decision roughly the same time based on roughly the same inputs. Um, so whether you've told people like, "Hey, put that back on that shelf 50 times," like don't repeat yourself, record yourself. Maybe like a stupid simple one I've seen. My buddy runs a auto garage, and he just like rather than yelling at everybody to put the trash cans back where they belong, he just taped out on the floor where the trash cans are supposed to go. And now, if it's not where it's supposed to go, it bothers people, and they see what they're supposed to be doing, and they just inherently drag it over. Some people trace the outlines of the tools on the tool board so that they all go back in the same place every time, and it's obvious when one is missing. Um, Sometimes it's as simple as like a sign on the doors, like "Did you lock the door?" Double check that you locked the door. Like these are really, really simple things that all add up. Another is like, it's a little more white collar. It's like every time I send a, a new email that I know I'm going to send multiple times, I create a template for it. And over time, those templates just add up, and my team can share those templates, and we see how we are all answering similar questions. Um, Maybe there's even a smarter way to do that to like feed that into a library that's in an AI project that can like draft emails based on previous emails that have been written in similar contexts. I think those tools will just keep getting faster, but like how you see your contribution there, like the person receiving that email does not benefit from you spending the 20 minutes with your fingers on the keys to rewrite the thing that you've written 10 times before in the same situation. So how do you eliminate repeat effort of externalizing some of these messages that you've got to do? Um, there's just a handful of those like axioms or reminders, put it on a sticky note, put it on your thing, focus on one at a time. Um, there's a whole handful of ways to look at this. Like I wrote a blog post called 50 First Levers, which is like a very tactical, like it's probably is a couple years old. So there's a bunch of new ones. I'm sure maybe there's 100 more I can drop, or maybe I can get that 50 to 100, but just like little things to start feeling the momentum build of in your life of like, you'll catch yourself doing something. You're like, "Fuck, I do this every single day the exact same way. How can I?" And frankly, like asking AI how to eliminate this thing, or how to automate it, or how to code it, or what tools are available, or like it's a very powerful ally for hammering down some of those repetitive tasks.
Where are you employing the most leverage right now? And where could you be employing more leverage but haven't got around to it?
I mean, the highest leverage thing I've ever done is write a book. Because millions of people have read that now. And a thing that I know that I'm should be doing that I'm not is spending a lot more hours than I currently am on my next book. Um, so I've got a third book coming this fall, and I'm doing it currently a very bad job of um, not doing like pushing things off in the short term. The like urgent and lightly important, and the not urgent but mega important. Because I think that like that 2 by 2 matrix is actually fractal. And you could kind of like keep dividing and find out like the one important thing that you're really supposed to be doing that's not necessarily no one else would consider urgent, but is actually the most important thing. Um, the podcast, and the newsletter, and the social, and the investing, like all of those are sort of slowly compounding leverage. And now in my role at Scribe, I feel like I'm able to spend a really productive hour or two on helping people like position or frame or design their books. And then the rest of the team spends hundreds of hours turning that book into something really high impact for the author. And just is a position where I can help a lot of people sort of get their book out into the world, and hopefully sprinkle a little like special sauce on it on the way by.
Yeah. If we're I mean, you touched on it there, the highest leverage thing you've ever done is written a book, and I'm assuming the first one you're talking about there is the one about the Val, the almanac
Yeah.
of Naval Ravikant.
Yeah.
If we were to jump specifically into the Val for a second, which nivalisms have gained or lost relevance in the AI era, particularly in the context of leverage?
He's got some great I mean, he's got great ones about leverage. He's got one about, like, there's an army of robots, like, awaiting your bidding.
Yeah.
They're just stored in a, basically in a warehouse, but they're, like, standing by awaiting your orders. His is pithier than mine, but, that is now way more true than it was when he said it for the first time, maybe like 7, 8 years ago, like maybe more. That was very specifically about like go learn to code. Now, frankly, you don't even need to. And so not only are like s- digital robots and software agents available for you and awaiting your orders, but actually, as we get to robot arms are getting cheaper, drones are getting cheaper and more abundant. There is code for managing them somewhat autonomously in some cases. There are humanoid robots coming soon, and basically already shipping in some cases. There are self-driving cars that like the amount of the real world that you will soon be able to control is unreal, right? Like even if you just think through like a marketplace APIs and stuff, like you can my EA makes stuff appear at my door in Kansas from the Philippines weekly, like through Instacart or Amazon or whatever all these things are. And it's actually like quite crazy when you think about it. And robotics is only going to accelerate that. Um, 3D printing is going to accelerate that. Like there's just so many things that if you have this mindset that like anything is possible and you have this broad capability, you're only a few skill acquisitions away from being able to do basically anything, which is this is the trait that like great founders have is as Paul Graham described it as being relentlessly resourceful. And the like the skill explosion that YouTube represented is going to be nothing compared to the skill explosion that AI represents. Um, and I think the difference between people who progress through their lives as insanely like superhuman levels of competence versus people who muddle through like a zombie is just are you resourceful enough to go learn what skill you need to learn and then learn some of it and then go after it and like it's a really yeah, I'm old enough now to have seen enough of these like divergent paths of like people who are compounding skills and experience and improving and people who are either doing that at a slightly lower slope or not doing it at all. And, you know, over 5 years or 10 years, that becomes really clear. I think that's gonna become more and more clear sooner and sooner. Um, and those outcomes are gonna diverge for the resourceful.
What does that look like as a society? Like you're one of a very small percentage of people that is incredibly resourceful and does take the time to learn skills and compound them together and get from different resources. Like, what does the actual state of society look like when we live in a world where most people spend 8 hours a day on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram and aren't spending the time learning these skills? Like, are you optimistic about the state of society in the future?
Yeah, I am by nature super optimistic. I think people will generally get what they want, and I think a lot of people like, there's a lot you and I and probably everyone listening, like, would hate to end up as a zombie, who's, like, not accomplishing anything, doing anything, building anything, contributing to, like, this beautiful future. But there's a lot of people who just want to live, like, a relatively safe, untroubled life. And there's versions of that that for some people look like a pretty normal job and a family and kids and just, like, a typical kind of white collar fence or white picket fence. But there's also people that looks like something that would feel dystopian, which is like you spend 12 hours a day playing video games in VR and you have all your food delivered and you are not very active and you die at 40 and you're addicted to, porn and caffeine and weed. And like, that's not how I want to live. Um, I wish that people wanted more for themselves and I think they'd be happier if they did. But I don't think that's a terrible through a historical context, that is not a terrible outcome, right? Like, a terrible outcome is 50% child mortality or getting conscripted into the army for, and dying in a battle when you're 16 for a king that you never met and ideas you don't believe in. Like, that's pretty close to like the mode outcome for a lot of people in history, or starving to death because of like a harsh winter. So like I'm actually very optimistic through the lens of like that's just what some people are going to choose, and it's their right to choose that, and it's not awesome, and they'd probably be happier if they made different choices, but it's their right to make those choices. Um, but that doesn't reflect like a bad outcome for civilization, I think. As long as there are like equal outcomes is not the goal, right? Like
Mm.
equal opportunity and freedom of choice is the goal. And I think some people have like lost sight of that in this political environment. But like try telling somebody who wants to build a bunch of companies and do a bunch of things and make the future better that equal outcomes are what matters. So they should get their ass on the couch and get addicted to like video games, porn, and fast food. This is not going to work. Not going to work. Or telling the other person that they don't have the right to choose that because they should be going and doing more and forcing them to do more. And like, you got to give people you got to respect the choices that each individual person makes and the consequences of it.
I got you. I want to finish off with one question and take this however you want to take it. Why do you do what you do?
I suppose there's lots of reasons that depend on the project and the things, like what the thing is and why I'm doing it. I think broadly, as I sort of talked about the lens that I see the world, like I am driven and motivated to use the gifts that I have to make the future better. Like the way I see the world is there have been thousands upon thousands of generations of our ancestors who like scratched, clawed, fought, survived, procreated, and invented and made the incredible abundant situation that we are in today. Like, thank fucking God we weren't bored at any single point in the past, right? Like, anybody who says there was a better time in history to be born knows nothing about history. Um, and so I feel very, very grateful to be born, yeah, not just in this day and age, but also like in America, in the Western world, where we are like safe and well fed. I think broadly as a civilization, like our stats are getting better, less people are in poverty, less babies are dying, more diseases are getting cured, things in general are getting better. But I think and hope that the same thing will be true in, the year 2400. Like, in that they look back at us and are like, man, it sucked to be born in the year 2000. Those guys, like that life sucked. Can you imagine not living to 300 years old, not living to see your great, great, great grandkids grow up? Like, most of us lack the imagination to see how much better the world can get, and the media is very incentivized to show us what's wrong, not what could be right. So I just try to spend a lot of time in the headspace of like, what does a really positive, abundant, utopian future look like? How can we play our cards right to get there? How do we allocate our resources and our attention and our respect and our honor on the people who are making next year, next decade, next 100 years better? So those are the books that I try to write. Those are the companies that I try to invest in. Those are the people I support. Those are the stories that I tell. Those are the tweets I retweet. Those are the podcasts I go on. Like, that's how I see, that is the North Star through which I see all of my work and why I do what I do. Like, I'm lucky at this point to no longer really have to do any work, but I am working harder than I ever have been because I believe that all of these things are important to do and that we, lead by example, and that I get personal satisfaction out of, you know, growing these things and achieving these goals. And life is this super fun video game that I get, joy, and I'm sure to some extent like satisfaction and ego boost and whatever out of doing. And so we keep doing it. And I think it's better than not doing it.
I have one follow up question just based on what you've said there.
Okay.
What do you think's more important? Happiness, fulfillment?
There's a lot to unpack before that could be a one word answer. Um, I think everybody has the right to choose whatever they want. Um,
The
and
reason
it's
I
nowadays
ask,
when
if I was to unpack
you
it,
yeah.
yeah, if I'm to unpack it a little, I remember you speaking in another podcast, and you were talking about a tweet that Naval put out of like why people do things, and it's usually mission, God, or family,
Mhm.
as the three things. And from our entire conversation, it sounds that you are entirely mission driven, but also very happy as well. And I always kind of wonder, like, is our goal in life to find satisfaction and happiness, or is it to kind of fulfill a larger role in the advancement of our civilization? And are those obviously those two things are correlated and intertwined, but what's more important?
Well, so I will also say, like, I do not lead with this usually on podcasts because, like, nobody else cares about not nobody, but, like, most people are more interested in mission conversations than family conversations, but I also spend, like, a very large percentage of my time on family, and family is extremely important to me.
Mm.
Um, and to me, like, I'm not particularly religious, but I suppose I could say I see God in the mission. Like, I get a spiritual level of satisfaction out of doing things that I think make our species and our civilization better off. Um, this is a like too much to end a podcast on, but like um, I've no evidence to suggest that we aren't the only conscious things in the universe, and we much more likely created God in our image than the other way around. And I think that the right way to view our level of responsibility for our species, our planet, our civilization, and our consciousness is that, like, we should proceed as though we are the only conscious beings in the universe. Nothing is coming to save us. And it is our responsibility to keep the light of consciousness alive because, as far as we know, we're the only one. And through that lens, some of the things that happen in the world today through like it are just like extremely, extremely heartbreaking because people are not like aligned around that mission of advancing the civilization, advancing the species, protecting consciousness. There's a lot of conflicting ideologies that really slow us down from focusing on that, and that's a that's a thing that I hope to see shift and change a little bit. I don't think we're living through a very interesting period of time, and it'll be really, really interesting to see where we end up, 50 or 100 years from now. Um, how the I think there's a layer of very interesting sort of cooperative technologies that like have defined history at different points, and we're going through a change or shift in them, and there's a lot of room for improvement. It'll just be really interesting to see what we're able to put together, and if we can find a way to cooperate more tightly, more productively, with a higher percentage of our most brilliant people and all of the rest of the people focused on a common goal. Um, that is like good for the advancement of the civilization. I think that'll be like we'll make some mind-blowing progress, and we'll have that moment of, people in 2400 being like, thank God they did all that stuff they did. Like we live in an unfathomable abundance, and we're colonizing the galaxy, and all these incredible discoveries have been made, and there's a lot less suffering and a lot more happiness and a lot more humans and a lot more of everything. Like a lot more of everything good.
I do have one last question. I swear it's the last one, but it's just based on everything you've said again. Will we ever see a book done by you, about you, for you, on your thoughts and your feelings from everything you've experienced, your role as a CEO at Scribe, your role as one of the partners at Rolling Fun, all of the books you've written, because you've got such a wide array and range of experiences that are really, really interesting to intertwine into one thing. And I would love to read a book written by you if that was
Uh,
available.
I mean, I appreciate that. I like it'll be like a long while, if at all.
Mm.
I think I'm still learning so much from like doing this for other people, and I think there's a lot of people that are very important to sort of highlight and um, frankly, they put a lot of these ideas better than I could, and so I'm still kind of like, collecting and curating. There's a lot of progress. There's a lot of projects on the list, that I would like to do and like to get to, and hopefully with all this leverage, I can get to more of them sooner. Um, but it's not coming anytime soon. But I appreciate the kind words. I do write. I blog a lot. I tweet a lot, and I podcast a lot, and like you'll just have to do with that for now, I guess.
Well, I mean, I want to thank you for coming on. I wish we had an extra hour to talk about mission, God, family, philosophy, psychedelics, but we're both short of time. So I want to thank you for coming on and taking the time. If people want to learn more about what you do, who you are, and what you're building right now, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, personal site is ejorgenson.com. Links to everything that I do is there, the newsletter, the podcast, the fund, um, all that stuff. But and scribemedia.com is the publisher that I run. So if you like help writing or publishing or marketing a book, we'd love to help.